All right, everyone, I think that's our cue. We will get started. Thanks for being here. I think we got a lot of exciting stats to share. As you've seen in other sessions, Parcel Forum is really trying to solicit feedback, make sure we got the right speakers up here and you're getting a lot of value out of it. So let's take time to rate it and submit your best tip afterwards and make it a better show for next year. Introduction is a little bit by myself. Berkley Stafford, CEO of TransImpact. I've been in supply chain my whole career. Started with UPS out of college on the preload. If you got any UPSers or FedExers in the building, you know what that means. It's not a lot of fun work, but you stay there a long time. Went there and worked in an operational sales capacity for 15 years. Left there, went to work for a Swedish company called Envirotainer. In cold chain logistics or temperature managed supply chain, working with the top 40 pharma around the world. That was a great endeavor. And then back in 2013, came back to help build out TransImpact. So that's a little bit about me. And I was thinking about last night, man, there's a lot of AI predictive sessions. It's a very exciting time for our space, logistics holistically. And I'm thinking, man, I got access to ChatGPT. I'm doing a session on predictions. I'm gonna load this joker up into ChatGPT and see what it spits out. And I want 10,000 scenarios of what my successful path is to bring value to you. At 5,700, the response was, please stop, still sucks, 12 people will fake a bathroom break. That's a joke. So the point of that is we're all using ChatGPT. We're using it in our company. AI is everywhere. Predictive is everywhere. How do you use it? We'll tell you a little bit about how we're using it and how we're able to predict. So that's what we got into the agenda for today, is what's on the horizon for Parcel Market 26. If you were in Gartner, there's a lot of stuff coming. When, we don't know. It's tough. Predictions are very, very tough. We're getting better, especially with our own data. The 26 GRI predictions, what that means to our industry holistically, the changes that the carriers are making, predominantly the UPS, FedEx, and what it means for you. And then understanding the true impact of your bottom line and how do you get there? That's tough. If you don't live and breathe parcel every day and you're working with multi-modes of transportation, how many work with more than just parcel in their endeavor? Okay. You can't be a master of everything. There's a lot of great intelligence and providers in the rooms, in the exhibit halls. Let those teams help you. So we've been doing this about 4 years. And we've gotten really sharp the last two. We've hit the nail on the head. We're going to talk about how we ingest data to predict what's the GRI going to be. And it's not just a guess. There's a lot of science behind it. And a lot of the science that we're applying, the carriers are applying to how they assess and introduce new surcharges to you. We'll talk about what that is too. So let's talk about some of the key changes. In the last couple years, and this is going to make sense. I'll put it all together in a minute, but this is going to make sense on why in the world are we incurring so many off-cycle increases. It used to be, think about it, pre-COVID, a GRI, psst, that's it. Peak season didn't exist really until the carriers got smart. Now we're incurring more off-cycle, multi-annual increases than we've ever incurred before. That makes it extremely hard to budget. So what's the tidbit for you guys? You have to budget for these off-cycle increases now. You probably haven't been in the past. You need to be, and there's ways to do that. And we'll give you some insight on how to do that. But look, each one of these up here, and I'm gonna go through them, represent approximately 1 to 2% transportation spend impact to you. Each one of these. UPS had 4 changes in fuel surcharge alone this year. 4. FedEx had 2. Additional handling, oversize, and LPS. They've increased the zonal rates for each of these surcharges. the new weight-based LPS criteria. Now, there's several ways that you as shippers can arrive at being assessed an LPS charge. There's a new one. Anything over 110 pounds is now eligible for a large package surcharge. The dimensional criteria shift, you may or may not have heard this, and the reason why is because UPS announced it and delayed it. UPS said, hey, we're going to assess dimensional criteria charges that basically were length time width time height, regardless of or incurring all size-based charges for additional handling and large package surcharge. They delayed it. Does anybody know why they delayed that announcement? Now, why in the world would a company like UPS and FedEx delay potential revenue generator? That's a good one, and they're getting a bunch of that, but that's not it. Yes, sir.
The financial impact. They undervalue financial impact. What we had a customer. They were sold a $2 million impact, $15 million.
You're touching on something now, and at the end of the day, these are very indirectly related. You're getting a lot of smarter consumers that are doing the best math that they can. The answer is they found a way to make more money. That is not the one you want to hear, but that's a fact. They delayed it because FedEx came out with the rounding up rule. UPS said, oh, God, they're going to make more money than us. Stop that one, do that one. And that's exactly what happened. UPS delayed this one. So I say delay. I didn't say terminate, cancel. It's got a place in our world in the future. They delayed it because this one's more of a revenue generator for them. What does the rounding up DIMS mean? When I was in elementary school, you had a round down situation too. That shit is out in this world. Everybody's rounding up in UPS's and FedEx's world. That's no joke. Every incremental inch is rounded up. I want you to think about the impact to your volume on that one. Zip codes continue to be adjusted and realigned in DAS area search, the DAS areas. Zone realignments. Just think about the multitude and myriad of ways that slight adjustments make money. UPS and FedEx, they're good companies. I don't like to bang them up so much, but I'm going to a little bit. They are very good at delivering packages. They're brilliant at making money. Brilliant. Resi area surcharge is now assessed on deferred ground. My favorite one, and I'm going to bash them on this one, particularly UPS, and I still got a little brown in my blood. Who's heard of the 2% payment processing fee? It doesn't matter if you're writing a check to UPS, wire transfer, ACH, or a freaking carrier pigeon. You're going to pay 2% for doing business with them. That's the dumbest thing I have ever heard in my life. But that's a fact. If you don't know about that one, look at your invoice. It's probably there, and it's a nasty one. But that's exactly what happened. 2% of payment processing fees assessed to you. Now, a quick look back. Gray line represents inflationary environment. At the end of the day, 4.9% was the gold standard. I mean, you could bank on that for a long time, all right? COVID hits. The world doesn't know. Everybody's trying to make good decisions. Not to say that they made a bad one, but when capacity evaporated, they're going to make up for some of that. They had some significant investment they put in. They put in package cars. They put in sort centers. They put drivers on the road that did not come up through their companies. That's unheard of from when I was there. In the early 90s when I worked there, you had to work at UPS, earn your way up, and then you were a driver. They're hiring them off the street. That's how fast e-commerce grew. You take a 5-year trend. Back in 2020, there was stats that said, hey, over the next 5 years, e-commerce is going to grow in X. And I can't remember the X piece, but what I do remember is the 5 years was condensed into 6 months. That's how fast it grew. So the infrastructure took a hit. That's why you see over the last couple of years, it went up to 6.9, came back to 5.9 last year. We nailed both of those on the target. So we're going to talk about our prediction and how we get there for this calendar year. But it's tough. And I want you to keep in mind for a minute, it's a general rate increase. It's directionally good for you. It gets you in the ballpark, but it's not the true financial impact to your bottom line. The base charges or services that you're using might be assessed a 0.1% increase. It might be assessed a 5% increase. The ones that you typically don't use might get a very small increase. All of this stuff aggregated together is where they come up with a general rate increase. Really diving into your own data to determine what's the financial impact, because the general rate increase typically doesn't apply to surcharges. It doesn't apply to other various things in your rate agreement, which is how, when you're looking at the end of the year, CFO says, man, dude, you told me 5.9. Well, I thought it was 5.9. It's actually 7.3. That's a fact. That happens every single year. It's very tough to do this math, though. I mean, it takes technology to help you do this type of stuff. So how are we predicting? We had an idea, is what it comes down to back in 21, all right? We have a supply chain planning suite of products on our company, of which dominantly there's an engine, a forecasting engine that serves that market. You're forecasting demand and supply, and you're assessing those types of things for supply chain planning. And then we've got our parcel side of the house, and that is built on a rating engine. The ability to re-rate every package to determine these general rate increase impacts to you guys. We cross-pollinated it and said, hey, we can start forecasting GRI. We can actually start forecasting client spend. I'll talk about it in a minute. But for purposes of this conversation, we're ingesting the carrier net income, FedEx and UPS net income, the carrier volume, the macro inflationary environment, consumer price index, the fuel index, the historical parcel volumes, the carrier growth, and then the percentage of overall spend. And we're ingesting all of that information, and our model actually spit out 5.4%. But if you look at the graph on the previous slide, there's a 0.9 on every year. So we round it up, and that's no joke. It's gonna be 5.9 is our prediction. Another year of 5.9. It's gonna be very close. Now, talking about how you assess the financial impact to you can take this same basis, include your historicals, include your organic growth, include your budgeted target for next year on supply and demand planning, and you can actually forecast spend of what you're going to write checks for before the budget season. Think about what you could do with that information. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do now that you could not do in years past. So again, our prediction's 5.9. There's some risk now. Let me talk about this. And this is the marriage I was trying to bridge or tee up at the beginning of the presentation, where you got these off-cycle increases that are coming up, and they're weird. Last couple of years, they're flying at you. Why is that happening? Does anybody want to take a guess of why that's happening? That's spot on. He said quarterly revenue. So think about this. Post-COVID, I'm UPS and FedEx, and that 6 months of 5 years worth of shipping and all of that investment I just made, and now it's out. Now they're grounding planes, shutting down the package cars, shutting down centers, laying off drivers to meet Wall Street expectations. So here we are. They're trying to figure it out. Everybody's trying to figure out something that they didn't or weren't able to do in the post-COVID era. This is what they're trying to figure it out, and they're really smart about it. If there is an anticipated miss in their quarterly projection, or they've missed it, off-cycle increase. Man, whether we like it or not, that's smart. They're getting smarter. We got to be smarter than them. So the next quarterly call, which is typically where FedEx announces UPS's follow suit, is September 18th. Those things are there. I mean, it's watching paint dry, but there is gold in some of those quarterly earnings calls. I got a couple for you. We got a parcel out teams that listens to that stuff. That's part of how we get a GRI prediction. But long story short, it's highly likely they're going to announce the GRI at September 18th, and they'll talk about their quarterly earnings and any potential off cycles. Those are how you get that information, but that's the marriage there. Projections, meeting those projections and expectations is why the off cycles are increased. Key takeaways of some of the announcements. The overall increases across the board is kind of aligned with last year. We're continuing to see increased long zone and heavyweight shipments. We're seeing increases there. In addition, now follow this one, and all the sessions you've been in this week, this will make sense to you. Lower increases in short zone shipments as regionals and gig carriers are entering the market. So think about that one. You just saw something in Gartner. There's 54 carriers. You got On Track in the other room. You got other carriers I honestly have not heard of yet, but they're popping up everywhere. Most of the carriers don't have an air service. They are highly competitive on price. Some of them have great footprints and can compete, not toe-to-toe, but really close. And they're offering 2-day transit minimum, all in a ground network. Kind of this Zone 2, Zone 3 transit. Well, that's a direct competition to Zone 2, Zone 3 of UPS. In the UPS and FedEx worlds, the cost to serve is significant for a hub and spoke deal. And there is one fuel for that engine. You all know what it is? Volume. Ground pays the light bill, keeps the doors open, breaks even. Surcharges, 40% of the profitability that the carriers enjoy today come from surcharges and accessorials. And the premium air services, okay? But the point being, they're being careful now with the increases they're making in the short zones because they don't want to lose business. So you got a lot of parties like myself that we may, through our services, dilute UPS and FedEx revenue with client. The regionals are snatching it out of their P&L. They're paying attention. That's a big thing. All right, UPS Ground Saver and FedEx Economy. So these services have a legacy. Let's talk about these for a minute. So UPS and FedEx, I talked about the cost to serve. These companies got short-term ORs and long-term ORs, operating ratios. All that means is, in the short term, if I'm to sign this client, how much money am I going to make? They're willing to take a hit on some of the short runs of a 3-year agreement. They know that through the accessorials, off-cycle increases, GRIs, the long-term value of their agreement that they're signing with you, they're going to make money. So they got think tanks that do this stuff, guys, okay? There's several primary heavy hitter variables that drive costs at UPS and FedEx. One of them is residential deliveries. That's one of the most expensive things they do. I'm a UPS driver. I want to back up to the dock. I want to spend 7 minutes there and I want to drop off 42 packages. Or I got to drive 17 miles to drop off 2. It's expensive. Now, why am I telling you this? UPS SurePost, FedEx SmartPost, those are the legacy services that UPS and FedEx said, hey, typically our resi services are expensive, but especially if they're low value and lightweight. They want a box of bolts about that big. It's heavy, it's dense, takes up very little room in their assets. You give them some ping pong balls in a big old box or a lampshade, that's a very costly package to deliver. So their thought behind low weight, low value is, let's partner with the United States Postal Service. Postal Service, we're going to deliver it to the last mile DDU, that last mile kind of post office. And the postal carrier will carry it the rest of the way. Coincidentally, what was happening is 40% of that volume was being delivered by UPS and FedEx anyway. The Postal Service is a good thing for UPS and FedEx. That's what made those services and the ability to serve those clients profitable, okay? the United States Postal Service terminated those agreements. They came out with ground advantage, a direct competitor, some of the ground of UPS, FedEx. They took all that volume back. All right, UPS and FedEx pivoted. They came out with UPS Ground Saver and FedEx Ground Economy. These are the equivalent services that are now delivered end-to-end by UPS and FedEx and no longer a partnership with the Postal Service. So fast forward to today, it's not working out so well. In the last quarterly call, they missed their projections for P&L on these two services. Anybody want to guess what's happening behind the scenes? I know at least UPS is really trying to rekindle the partnership with the Postal Service. So there is a lot of things coming at everybody. This is another reason for off-cycle increases, but again, applies to the lightweight, low-value products. But that's exactly what's happening in these two services today. Some of the increases for international, you heard it at Gardner. I'm going to tell you a little bit of the same stuff right here. The forecast is going to be higher in 26 for increases on FedEx and UPS international services. It's coming. FedEx exports to Canada, imports from South Korea and Japan are predicted to be higher than average. Exports to Mexico, imports from China are forecast to see higher than overall increases. International demand surcharges throughout the year for various zones are going to continue to come. Now look, the tariffs are driving a couple things we've never heard of. Import and surge fees. These are basically, think about this. There's a chance FedEx announces 4.9%. Let's talk about why they would do that. We're predicting 5.9. We think it's going to be 5.9 no matter what they announce. And let me tell you why. They're starving for volume, both carriers. They want the volume they had at the COVID era to feed the machine. Volume feeds that machine. They got a competitive presence they've never had before with all these regional carriers. They could really throw out a very strategic move by saying we're going to do 4.9. But they're going to make it up to the actual 5.9 with the off cycles throughout the year. Think through that piece of it. There's unbelievable strategy associated with pricing communication. And now that they've got off-cycle increases, they're going to use it to their advantage. So the tariffs, these GRIs might look reasonable, but with the current environment, do not be surprised if the carriers add fees throughout the year for the tariff unknowns. That can come. So if you're a big international shipper, ear to the ground on that one. So what's the big deal? Surcharges are the big deal. Why are they the big deal? The GRI, I said this earlier, who's got a rate cap in their agreement? GRIs don't apply to that. If you want to know why some of the financial impact is different, it's being diluted because you think, hey man, I got a 2.9% rate cap, you clown. You announcing 5.9. A lot of that is not applied to the surcharges that you're being assessed with, and that's how this gets diluted. Historically, surcharges and accessorials increase greater than the announced GRI. That's a fact. Watch that one. These increases mainly impact non-electable accessorials like additional handling. So the ones that are non-electable. Next time you meet your UPS or FedEx rep, just tell them you don't elect to be assessed that surcharge. Non-electable. Whatever revenue FedEx and UPS do not get through GRI for services, they've got the ability, and they've used it this year, and you've seen it, to make that up in the off-cycle increases. This is a tough one, man. I was in a session either yesterday or the first day, and it was one of the exhibitors talking about they've set up their own post, their own LinkedIn post, and it's, hey, what did you miss? It's kind of something like that. And the increases and the changes are coming so rapidly, you can't keep up. So people are starting to build blog followers around, here's all the stuff that you probably missed last week. That's how fast and furious these things are coming at you. In the past 2 years, off-cycle increases have become more frequent and typically applied to surcharge and accessorials. So that's where we see it the most. And again, I'm telling you, 40% of the profitability comes from that bucket. That's why it's going right there. So when they're not making earnings, this is where it's going. The most common accessorial is resi surcharge, as it's applied to all residential deliveries, with the exception of ground economy and ground saver. We're predicting that this charge will be around 7% higher in 26 compared to 25 and 42% higher in 26 compared to 21. Now, why did I say that? We're just trying to illustrate that this is one of the few industries on the planet that you have to ingest, whether you like it or not, a rate increase. And this is trying to remind you that 42% since 21. That's unbelievable, man. These are huge, huge trends. Other than that, though, it's a vanilla type of increase. It's not a big thing, but that's the biggest one. That's huge. All right, additional handling is forecasted to go up by 25%, and large package and oversized by 32%. But this is a triple whammy. Let's talk about that with them for a little bit. With the rounding up, if you're not running an eligibility exercise, in other words, here's all my PLD for 2025 and 2026. How many of my packages were eligible to be assessed oversized or large package? You got to do that exercise for a bunch of reasons. Here's one: rounding up. I just told you that they have announced this new rounding up deal. You're going to have packages that didn't get hit last year that are going to get hit, or this year that's going to hit next year. That's one. That's one way this is going to impact you. The second way is they're simply increasing it. The percentage increase on the surcharge itself. The next one, we're expecting and predicting that the minimum billable weight on these two potential assessments is going to increase to 50 pounds from 40 for additional handling. And then what does that mean? More packages are going to qualify. So you got the increase itself, more packages are going to go qualify, and the minimum from 40 to 50. 3 independent and separate ways that you are going to take a hit on these two big surcharges. That is an incredible increase in your spend if you have a big package, if you have a heavy package, you have a dimensional situation. So in this room, in the exhibit hall, have you noticed how new technologies don't have anything to do with visibility? They don't have anything to do with shipping. They're popping up in there. Paccurate is an example. Packaging is going to make a difference in your worlds in the future. So if you're not looking at how you can change your package DIMs, I mean, that's a pain in the butt. There is no, especially depending on your product, you got to get QA involved. You got to get a corrugate supplier involved. You got to get all that stuff involved. There's an assessment you got to do. If I were to change 25 of my 86 corrugate boxes, if I change those to avoid this, that's a one-time cost assessment versus a continual assessment. That's an easy math equation. It's going to be painful operationally, but that's absolutely something you guys should be doing, is what does my package DIMs have to do with my transportation? The other thing, a lot of the times, and you might be in the room on this one, we've got a couple clients that are really big global golf brands, and then this has got them squirrely. Because in their world, you got to, I mean, the amount of science that goes into developing a golf club and a golf ball would blow your mind. I didn't know this till I went there, and I suck at golf, so I went on the tour instead. Learned a lot about why I'm not good. At the end of the day, There's a tremendous amount of science in that golf club. There's a tremendous amount of expense associated with that, set with suppliers and all that type of stuff. Throw in the tariff thing where I'm looking to get out of China, maybe Vietnam, maybe Malaysia, to source it and manufacture it, come into a different port. Now I've got to land it here, and now you want to hit me with a package dimension type of deal. How do I change it? That's a lot of effort that goes into that, but I would do an assessment of what's the expense. The point of that comment, though, these last few minutes is when these packages go through the UPS and FedEx sort centers, I mean, these things are highly automated, but they still make mistakes, guys. Everything's got lasers everywhere. They're unbelievable technology, and it's very impressive to see. These lasers are snapping the dimensions. Well, every now and then, if a box is too close to another box, it has nothing to do with yours, it's pulling it in. Every now and then, if a box gets crushed and you don't have additional handling, but it bulges out, the lasers catch it, additional handling. You got to have somebody looking at that stuff. It's a lot. I mean, I'm throwing a lot at you, but this is the real deal. This is a lot of money. So our predictions, don't expect anything that you've heard over the last 30 minutes and the previous sessions over the last day and a half to change. This leapfrog effect is happening and it's coming. UPS raising LPS commercial surcharge to match the Resi surcharge is another prediction. FedEx following UPS on the 110-pound oversize rule. FedEx following UPS switching to cubic size calculations, but less likely because of the rounding changes. So now it's funny. They tip their hand a little bit. I don't know what we're going to be able to do about it immediately, but there's a surcharge in the making with that dimensional criteria deal that they delayed. They're just going to sit on the shelf and they're going to wait. And at some point, they're going to put it into action. FedEx adding remote area fees to ground economy. Continuous updates to the fuel surcharge indexes. Now with the global economic situation, I mean, you think about the wars that we've heard about between Ukraine and Russia. You've got, good gracious, they just escaped my mind. There's been 4 or 5 global conflicts that are driving fuel and tariff discussions. And whether or not they're legit is immaterial. If there's an opportunity to take advantage of a tariff situation, they're going to do it. But the global conflicts could affect the tariff surcharges and the fuel surcharges. That could come. And the escalations between China and all that kind of stuff, pay attention to that. I mean, that's going to drive costs somewhere. Increase in minimum billable weight for additional handling. And then time in transit. Look at this one, guys. Commit time changes to the carrier network. Before COVID, anybody that had a post order in this business, you got somebody that's taking all that packages that were delivered last week, you're tracking every one of them, you're making sure that they were delivered on time or they're compliant with the rate and service guide of UPS, FedEx. And if they're not, you get your money back. Well, they suspended all that stuff in the COVID environment. Remember that? They suspended it. It's not come back in full vigor. I mean, they're kind of sinking it in there every now and then. And now they're talking about contracting the time in transit. Now, you just saw Gartner in there saying one of the biggest things is you got 2 big things, speed and reliability. Well, reliability is equivalent to on time. You did what you said you were going to do. These are big changes coming. We'll see how. I don't know how, in order to compete, at some point, you got to put that guarantee back out there if you want the volume back. And that's going to be a competitive thing in the future. Price is it right now. You heard that? That's a fact. This is the hottest parcel market we have seen in the last 3 years that we have seen since our doors opened. That's no joke. The carriers are extremely aggressive. So the key takeaways, team, the 2025 rate cycle has been a blur for sure. Surprise rule changes, delays are not going to stop. If you're not watching the effective dates of surcharge definitions, so let me talk about that for a minute. You're in a rate negotiation. You raised your hands. I saw them. You're dealing with ocean, air freight, rail, LTL, truckload. You're dealing with all of them. You can't be masterful at every mode, okay? If you're not paying attention to some of the language in these small parcel agreements, you might think you've got a win, and you might in one of the 3 years that they've built for you. You might have that discount that's applicable that you fought for, and you got that savings, and you put a value to that. But in years 2 and 3, it either degrades or it's terminated. That's part of that short run and long run OR. I mean, you got teams at UPS and FedEx, I kid you not. All they do is negotiate agreements. All they do is assess cost to serve scenarios. That's all they do. They're very good at it. So every single letter on every single word on every single page of that rate agreement is meaningful. It really is. You cannot neglect reading those T's and C's, because you'll see a spike and you don't know where it comes from. It's because you got a surcharge discount that's no longer applicable in the second and third year of agreement. That's just one. That's just one of many ways that they're able to build an agreement that's profitable for them and makes you happy for a very short period of time. And then your shipping profile against these evolving changes. There's technology in the other room, I promise you, that you can re-rate every single package that you have to the penny and tell you what the financial impact to your bottom line is going to be before you write the check. So there's a lot of stuff that you can take in and absorb. There's advantages you have now that you didn't have. And as shippers, if I'm in your seat, I can walk in the door to the CFO and CEOs of the world armed with dollars you're going to spend, validated and measured. It's not a guess. It's not a general thing. Here's what we're going to do, plus or minus 1 or 2%. This is it. You can do that stuff. All right, questions. And look, for those that have really good questions, I got some really smart people from my team in the room. Some of them have been with UPS a long time. Some of them have been in those revenue management positions. Some of them are writing the contracts for our clients. So ask questions. Let us help you. What do you got?
What do you think is going to happen with the regional? They're going to be a GRI with most of them?
The regionals are, I would say, they got a fraction of the surcharges. I don't know that they're going to apply a general rate increase. I don't know if they're going to follow suit with that. Lewis, you got any prediction on the regionals?
Yeah, I mean, they got all over.
Your case, like a free like contract, will announce that the UPS and FedEx people else. They're all trying to drive additional reduce profit. The step cost to deal up. Was that what you saw?
So I think that's a yes. We've got some really good communication going on with a couple of regionals in the room, some of the bigger ones. The investments they're making to really compete in geos that they typically have not been in, that investment's warranting these general rate increases. I just don't have a prediction on them, but it's definitely coming. I just don't know what it's going to be. We haven't put them into our mix yet, but we anticipate we're probably going to do that. But they are, I'm telling you, in our world, and I think you saw it in the on-track exhibit hall over there, they are very aggressive. They've got a footprint that is double the size when they merged with LaserShip, and now they can compete at a level they've never been able to compete with, and they're starting to really assess. You know, at first, you building a hub and spoke, consider UPS is like 127 years old. All right. They've got a lot of investment, a lot of failures and successes in that hub and spoke. They've built the on-tracks and Amazon of the world. They're learning that too. They're building that out. But the point of that comment is they don't have to go through all the bad learning curves. They got a lot of UPSers and FedExes going over to the regionals to help them with that type of stuff. So they're going to avoid a lot of the costly mistakes that UPS and FedEx had in the past. And the investments they're making with the aggressive rates they're offering, they're going to be a formidable player for sure. I mean, and you see that across. I mean, if you've been coming to this, we've been coming to this forum for 15 years. Regionals weren't in the room until about 3 to 5 years ago. Now they're all over the place. It's coming. It's a good question. What other questions?
Yeah.
Say it again. Okay. Okay. Full GRI prediction report on our website if you want more information. Guys, thanks for attending. Thanks for listening. Really appreciate it.